Could Josh Derry be the game changer that UCF needs at wide receiver? And UCF basketball loses, but they're not out of it yet.
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G. Turn us on, turn us up, we'll turn it out. I'm here with my good friend, James Duncan, UCF sports commentator extraordinaire, to talk a little UCF sports here on a Tuesday night. James, on today's show, we're going to talk about that interview with Josh Derry. I want to get your thoughts on the young man. I was impressed by Derry. Could he be UCF's number one receiver? And then we'll talk a little UCF basketball and their loss to Cincy. Start at the top here. I was impressed with his composure, with his maturity, with his knowledge of the games. Josh Derry seems like the prototypical receiver kind of portal player that you want to bring in if you're Scott Frost.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh Derry was an unbelievably productive receiver at his prior location. And if you want to go for production, Josh Derry is your guy. Over 1,100 yards, 70 plus receptions at his previous spot, tons of touchdowns as well, averaging 15 yards a reception. That's exactly what you want from a portal player. I think they went out and got a baller in Josh Derry.
I do too. Like, again, he was a 1,000-yard receiver at Monmouth last year, but he had a ton of receptions as well too. And we talked a little bit about whether they play him at the slot or on the outside. He said that he might do a little bit of both here. But what are your realistic thoughts about where they'll play him? I think he'll slide in right there at the slot.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting when you have such a productive guy coming back that primarily played in the slot with Dwayne Thomas Jr. I think it's interesting that you go out and you get a guy that's, kind of competitive, in the same height, speed, kind of similar play style. I actually wouldn't be surprised if they kind of threw him around. I'm interested to see if they go 10 personnel a little bit with him. Get more receivers on the field and kind of try and put the ball in the air. Having two Dwayne Thomas type of players, two speed slot guys on the field at the same time can be really dangerous in that short to mid game. Definitely not your 50-50 guy by any means, standing at, 5'9". But he has the speed to make you regret playing him one-on-one over top. So I think he has this like take the edge off or take, the top off capability. I'm interested to see how they use him as well. I did think it was kind of funny though, and I think you hear notable quotes from players every once in a while. But you said, where do you think you're going to be, most dangerous on, in the slot, outside? He goes on the field.
On the field. Maybe
I was like, that is cold. That is cold.
Yeah, maybe even sending a little bit of a message to his coaches here that, hey, look, man, I'm the guy you play because of the experience I bring and the leadership that I bring. And I thought that that's what jumped out to me from the interview is he does seem like he's going to be a strong locker room leadership type guy for Scott Frost here. And you need that going into year two. Talk to me real quick about the jump from FCS to Big 12 here. Again, one of my takeaways from this interview is this is a guy who's not going to shy away from the jump. As a matter of fact, he seems like a guy who might shine and thrive best under the pressure.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I think that's something that you see, something that doesn't always transfer over. Like people talk about talent and those kind of things not transferring over, but something that you don't see transfer over a lot is composure. And guys, that might have torched people at their previous level don't, have the same composure when playing against people that might do a better job in shutting them down or might, not allow the ball to come their way. I think that's something that you get in Josh Derry is that level of composure. I mean, you can see how kind of like calm and composed he was when talking about the things that he's going to do on the field. You can bet your butt that he's going to be out there composed, ready to get after the ball, and when the play is over, turn around, get back to the line of scrimmage and get on with the next play. And that is so important at wide receiver to not get frustrated and it's all a mental game. And, there's a very neat quote from, describing Sam Darnold when coming out of college. Now, Super Bowl winner Sam Darnold.
Crazy.
And, he bounced around to a bunch of teams. I think 5 teams he's been the quarterback for. And one of his, he was in a stacked draft class full of quarterbacks. And one of the things that they described him with out of college was that he is unafraid of failure. And I think that's so important when you're describing guys that are coming up from FCS or D2 to, this is Big 12 football. This is Power 5, Power 4 football. You have to not be afraid of failure. You have to say, listen, I know that at some point I'm going to face adversity against players that have been at this level or have achieved good things at this level. And I need to learn from those moments and not be afraid to fail so that I can get better. The only way that you can get better is to fail. I think that's what you're going to see with Josh Derry. Is you're going to see him face some adversity playing against these tougher guys, and he's going to have to overcome it.
Yeah, I agree. Look, Josh Derry grew up just north of Baltimore. We talked a little bit about his upbringing. He's a tough guy. He's a tough guy that's going to come in with a tough mindset, and he's already out there working with Alonzo Barnett III, trying to develop some chemistry. I talked about grabbing his fellow wide receivers and getting them out there on the field too to try to absorb everything as fast as they can headed into the season. Look. We've done some breakdowns here, but next I want to talk about whether Josh Derry is potentially the number 1 wide receiver in that wide receiver room this fall. We'll talk about that next right here on Locked On UCF. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our title sponsor, Mazda. This is Mazda's moving the game forward for those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. When you drive a Mazda, you're driving excellence, and every UCF player hopes to exemplify that excellence this fall on the football field. They remind us of what it's like to raise the bar. It's that extra work off the court, like Derry is talking about here on the football field with Alonzo Barnett, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, that grit, that I never quit. We put that same passion into every model of Mazda. Highlights make the real. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Mazda, move and be moved. Also want to thank our friends at Wayfair. The new year is here, and it's a perfect time to reset your routine and refresh your space. If you're spending more time at home, you might as well love how it looks and feels. That's why you should turn to Wayfair. It's a one-stop shop for getting your home back on track. From bedding and mattresses to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair makes it easy to start the year fresh. Wayfair has everything you need for a full home refresh all in one place. Whether you're updating your living room, organizing your space, or upgrading your work from home setup, Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find exactly what works for you and your style and budget. Get organized, refreshed, and back on track this new year for way less. Head to Wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's Wayfair.com. Wayfair, every home, every style. Who's number 1 in that wide receiver room? A lot of names we talked about on an earlier segment last month. But after hearing from Josh Derry, is he your pick, or is there somebody else in that room that you like to be the number 1 target for Alonzo Barnett III?
Yeah, I don't know. It's because and Mike, here's the only reason I say I don't know, right? Last year, your number 1 was Dwayne Thomas Jr. And that was because he was so reliable in the short to medium game. But we didn't have a deep ball game last year. We didn't have a guy that could just torch defenses last year with his arm. There was no threat. So you had to play underneath. You had to play in the midi. So Dwayne Thomas Jr. was your guy. But then you have to ask the question is, what happens if this offense changes? What happens if the abilities expand with Alonzo Barnett? You might have a guy that can torch defenses with his speed over top, and Alonzo Barnett's going to get him the ball where TJ might not have been able to, or Cam might have not been able to. Now you have a guy that can expand your offense. So I actually think this number 1 receiver is up for grabs. Do I think Derry's going to get it? I don't know. I think it's going to be really split. I also think that it's going to be really hard to not, to have a 50-50 guy that's not Dylan Wade, because your top receiver might be your tight end next year, especially,
Yeah, true.
deep over the middle, deep balls to the outside. Dylan Wade, very successful in being a 50-50 grabber. I don't know. I'm interested to see. I think it's entirely dependent on Alonzo Barnett and his comfortability with this offense. I think him and Dwayne Thomas Jr. are going to kind of be this 1-and-1 crew, 1A, 1B style of slot receiver. Uh, I think there's guys that you can't count out, like Wade and Charles, and you might, see a little bit of Slim Jim, Jonathan Bibbs from ULM. There's a lot of guys in this room that can make a difference, and I would say don't count out Tyron Horns either.
Yeah, like one of the guys we talked about was Dwayne Thomas Jr. We talked about him making the decision to return. Wade and Charles, we talked about Day Farmer in that room there.
How could I forget about Day? How could I forget about Day? I mean, he was going into spring last year, he was looking like your starter. So I mean, listen, Mike, there is so much competition in this room, and that makes everyone better. Just at the baseline, it makes everyone better when you have competition. If there are 6 guys going into next year's room, then you could say they could be starters. Then at the wide receiver position, that's good. At quarterback, if you have 2 guys that are competing for the job, if you have 2 starters, then you really have 0. I think with wide receiver, you want as much competition as possible.
Yeah, look, I thought they had a ton of potential. Again, the uncertainty at quarterback limited the production of this room last year. They think they've solved that in Alonzo Barnett III. So it really will be about which guys will just step up and make plays when you need plays done. Before we move on, is there a 1,000-yard receiver in this group? Potentially?
That's so tough, because I see AB3 being the kind of quarterback that spreads out the offense, and I could see like 3 to 4 guys having 700 plus, 750 plus yards.
Mm.
I think Dylan Wade is one that you have to like pencil in at tight end, and I think Dwayne Thomas is another one of those guys. I think Derry probably is maybe a 500, 600-yard guy, potentially, maybe more. I think you can't write out Wade in. I think there's like Mike, it just gets me so fired up that we have so many names to talk about. It gets me so fired up.
Yeah, I think there are definitely a ton of names to talk about, and there are a bunch of guys that are going to fly under the radar headed into the season. If you're Scott Frost, you maybe want it that way. Right? You don't want them talking about your guys right now. You want them talking about your guys at the end of the season, hopefully, when they've done something to deserve that attention. So, if it works out that way for UCF, then I think that's going to be great here. Look, let's get to our last segment, James. When we come back, we're going to talk about UCF basketball, their loss to Cincinnati, and what they have left on the schedule if they want to make the NCAA tournament. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local tax expert in person or connect online. They'll handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. UCF basketball went down to Cincinnati. Talk to me here, James. Look, and they got a 20 burger put on them. So it was rough. It was a rough loss. They did well in that stretch that we thought that they would need to do well in, but some old demons kind of reared their head for UCF on the hardwood. Only 41% from the floor here, 26% from three. 6 for 23 was rough. They shot 80% from the free throw line, and this one, but they did get almost 18 points off turnovers. They just lost the rebounding battle, and it was tough. Well, what did you see from a UCF basketball? And we're going to get into the schedule here, but how devastating do you think was this loss to Cincy?
I think it definitely hurt. I think it hurt a lot. And I think the reason that it hurt is bigger than the mark going into the loss column. It hurt because not only did you take 2 losses in a row, but you took 2 losses by more than 20 points in a row. Now that is forgivable against Houston, maybe Iowa State. You're like, God, man, those are tough. Those are tough losses, but like, I guess it is what it is. Big top 10 teams.
Mm-hmm.
And then you lose by 20 to Cincinnati. And here's the thing, Mike, you got Jeremy Fumena back in this game. You had your second big back in this game to help you. John Bull got into foul trouble kind of early, had, 2 not so great calls against him. And then he comes out, then he gets a third call in the second half. And so you play him really sparingly. Fumena comes in, doesn't really make a ton of a difference. I don't like when they use Devin Cambridge at the 5 or the 4. It doesn't make sense. He's not heavy. He's not a big guy. He gets called on fouls every single time he touches somebody because he likes to play aggressively. He likes to play into the heads of people, and sometimes it works against him. I just think it's generally like Devin Cambridge. I think, he's a good off the bench player, maybe at the 3. But playing him against guys that are 7 feet tall just doesn't make sense to me. I think the other thing, the glaring issue in this game was that when one of your teammates, and we'll just say it like it is, Themus Fulks, has a horrible game. I mean, the worst game of his season, probably maybe ever in basketball.
He only put up 2 shots.
I mean,
in
he could
19
only
minutes of play, yeah.
And 0 points. 0 points. He turned the ball over. He didn't. It seemed like he was just running around. And I love Themus Fulks. I think he's a phenomenal basketball player. I think he's primarily the reason that UCF is doing so good this season. You have proven time and time again during this season that if one of your players has a bad game, that the other players around them will make up for it and bring that player up, which is why you've been able to compete in so many games this season. This was Themus had a bad game, and everyone around Themus also had a bad game because of it. And so you need Themus Fulks to have a certain level of consistency because he is the pioneer of this offense. He is the one that is keeping the structure, keeping the movement, keeping the direction of this offense. And if he isn't consistent, then you lose the entirety of the consistency of the offense. And so you lost all sorts of structure when Themus Fulks has a not so good day. You could tell that he was mentally just not there, it felt like. And just a really rough day from the team. I don't know why someone like George Beal isn't getting more minutes. He's been a very consistent shooter off the bench when he comes in. It seems like he's coming in and making immediate impacts whenever he's in the game, and they don't play him in minutes that mean anything. It's frustrating to see a player like that on your bench that comes off the bench every time and, hits 2 threes, hits 3 threes, and is a consistent shooter. I think, one of the things that this team has relied on is the 3 ball, and it's come back to bite them in a couple of games.
6 for 23. Yeah, 6 for 23. Look, UCF has West Virginia, TCU, and Utah up next. West Virginia and TCU at home. They'll go on the road to play the Utes. After that, they've got top 25 BYU out at BYU. And then they close their season with Baylor, Oklahoma State, and then they go to West Virginia for that last regular season game before the Big 12 tournament. Look, they're a 17-win team now. If they can be a 22-win team, I feel comfortable about them making the tournament.
I think if they are a 20-win team, I would feel comfortable with them making the tournament.
I hope so.
I just think that the games that you like, based off how the team was playing prior to these past 2 losses, I think you would have written in most of those games as wins. I think now every single one of those games is a 50-50 because you never know what you're going to get from the Big 12. You never know, what the officiating is going to be, of course, but you never know how a team could catch fire and your team could be ice. And that is what the UCF Knights have been. I figured after a brutal beatdown by Houston that the Knights would get inspired and try and go knock off like a team like Cincinnati that they have this kind of heated, they have this rivalry with, and the whole Mustafa situation. I figured maybe would fire up, UCF as a brand. I know none of them were on that team, but I think it's hard because this team has an identity and this team has a structure, but when that feels like it's has some cracks in it, the team breaks and the team kind of distances itself from each other. So I need to see this team come back, get restructured, meld the cracks with gold and get ready for this next game because you need to win multiple in a row to make yourself comfortable and to put yourself in a good situation for the tournament.
Agreed. Look, they haven't lost more than 2 games in a row so far this season. So again, a win versus West Virginia. Again, make sure that you don't go on a slide like they went last year. We'll see if they can bounce back. We'll bounce back tomorrow to talk even more UCF football and basketball right here on Locked On UCF.